and I challenge them to be leaders in our city and to remember why they moved to Calgary and help become one of the reasons why other people want to make this their home.
I believe in Calgary.
I believe in Calgary.
I believe in Calgary.
I believe in Calgary.
This is the We Believe in Calgary podcast.
We're here to give voice to the Zane Novak 2021 Mayoral Campaign by speaking to community leaders, local entrepreneurs, and civic visionaries about the issues and innovative ideas that affect Calgarians.
Join us every second Wednesday leading up to the municipal election on October 18th.
Johnny Morris, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Good to be on. Thanks for having me.
We always start the podcast with a very simple question, and that is, what is your Calgary story?
My Calgary story. Well, I was like most folks, or a lot of folks in the city. I'm not born and raised here. I was from Ottawa, Ontario, and I came out here for a curling event when I was 18 years old. I was playing in the Canadian Junior Championships, representing Ontario, and I'll never forget getting off the flight. I got into the Calgary airport, and I'll never forget the reception I got from the friendly volunteers and the cowboy hats, and it really struck me, and has been, I've kept that with me ever since. Is what a great welcome visitors, and that was one of the main reasons a few years later that I chose to move here. Was I really liked the vibe from Calgary. I really ever since I got that first reception and just the friendly country cowboy western vibe of Calgary, I just it was too good to refuse. So a few years later I ended up moving here, and since 2004 I've been here, and I've been lucky enough to have been very successful here, won a few Olympics, and I'm working the job I love to do, my dream job as a firefighter, and just feel very, very grateful to have stumbled upon Calgary.
Awesome. There's lots to talk about, and you mentioned your experience with the Olympics, and I definitely want to talk about that. But I guess we'll start more at the beginning. So you said 2004, you've been in Calgary. So I guess, what's it like? What's your experience been like being a transplant to Calgary?
It's been very good. I've met some wonderful people. I think there's some really good. At the time, there was so much opportunity in Calgary, and I still think there is a lot of great opportunity in Calgary, and I think that's what brings a lot of people here. Moving here, I didn't know if it was a one-year thing or going to be a lifetime thing, but I was just going with it. I just graduated university, and kind of the world was your oyster. It was how I thought, and so I moved out here. And my first job, I remember making minimum wage. I was working with children with special needs, and I didn't know where that was going to get me, but I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to. I knew that I really wanted to pursue firefighting. It was something that so I started volunteering at a fire station just outside of Calgary in Chestermere while I was living in Calgary, and that's where I really got to meet people. I got to meet some good guys that I lived with, and they kind of introduced me to country music and cowboy boots, and so and a pickup truck. I think that's when I bought my first truck. So I really kind of embraced the Calgary culture, and really, coming from a background in Ottawa, it's a very government kind of town, and a lot of my friends work for the government and work, Monday to Friday jobs, and that just wasn't for me. I've always liked to kind of live a little bit different that way, and I really liked what Calgary had to offer, because there's so many unique opportunities here, that I think that are a motivating factor for people moving here. And as I said, I didn't know if I was going to be here for my whole life or just a few years. And once you kind of get into the vibe of Calgary, and as long as I feel there's like a 1 or 2 year window in Calgary. When people move here, they're either some people are looking for the quick fix, and they're if they don't get that in the first year, they either get homesick, they don't get that quick fix, and they're out of here. But I think the people that actually embrace it and don't mind, like not getting that quick fix and making that really big salary right away, I find that once and kind of embrace the culture and the people here, that's the people that will stay and kind of are part of our core now. So that's me. I made minimum wage and volunteered. I think my first 4 years firefighting, after a few years, I was making $2 a shift. That was a big, that was a big pay raise. At least we could afford a little bit of lunch, but it was. I embraced the culture, loved it out here, and I've been here ever since. Now we got a young family with 2 kids, and yeah, I can't see living anywhere else right now. That's for sure.
Okay. So you have family back in Ottawa then?
Yeah, I still get homesick. I got my folks out there and two sisters, and they love coming here and visiting. It's it's a good change for them. And I still go home in the summer. We have a cottage back home near Ottawa that you get to go home and see the cousins and family and do some fishing, and so I still get to do that. But yeah, that's the one thing I'm missing, and I think that's why you have to kind of make sure you network well here, because if you don't have family, which I think a lot of people that move here don't, you got to create some family, and I've done that. I've reached out and have people in my life now that I would consider my family, and they're my go-to when it comes to things in my life where if I have an issue or if I need some support. I've created a pretty good tight-knit group that you can lean on when you need to, and it's sure nice to have.
So you're still currently firefighting?
Yeah, I'm working right now in Rocky View County, so just outside Calgary. Have been firefighting ever since '05. Started volunteering in '05, and then and now it's my career job, and I love it. I love going to work every day. I love working with my crew and helping out and making a difference. And you don't, every day is not. There's some days that are tougher than others, but I think it's the best job in the world, and I feel grateful for the opportunity that Alberta and Calgary was able to provide that.
So let's jump into your experience with the Olympics. So I guess maybe we'll talk about your billeting experience. So that's kind of what brought you to Calgary. Mm-hmm. You were staying with some families here in Calgary. Is that right?
Yeah, I moved here first of all, in Ontario, there's decent curling depth, but for the most part, if you're an aspiring athlete that wants to go to the Olympics, Calgary was like the hub. With what they created from that legacy in '88, it was obvious the place to move to come here to maybe achieve your Olympic goals. And so I realized at the time I was, in my early 20s, and I wanted to go to the Olympics and represent Canada. And I felt that the depth of curling out west, especially in Alberta, is second to none in all of the country. And then you also get to train with other Olympians, and it's very inspiring when you get to do that, because when you're working out, I think at the time Pierre Lueders was still bobsledding for Canada, and he was like an icon of the Olympics and a Canadian athlete, and being able to train next to him was very like, okay, I can do this. And I remember talking to him, and he was giving me some tips when I was younger, and so things like that. That's something that kind of brought me to Calgary, and I met some great families that one of the families that stands out is the Zimmermans. We're still really good friends to this day. I'm actually going to go over for a coffee over there this afternoon. So, some wonderful families that I've met that have kind of, when you're an amateur athlete, you don't have a lot of big bucks. You don't, especially early in your career, you don't have a lot of sponsorship. So you kind of take the support when you can get it. And I know that the Zimmermans, one of my teammates actually stayed with them for it was supposed to be 3 months, and it turned into almost 3 years, because it was such a good relationship. And so, just having that support in Calgary so that we could continue to pursue what we wanted to do, and that was our Olympic dream, was something that we needed, and I'll never forget that. Just families helping other athletes, and I think that's something that's still ingrained in a lot of Calgarians. It maybe just needs a bit of nudging to bring it back out again.
Sure, and your father also has some curling, professional curling experience as well. So I guess is that part of your inspiration? Yeah,
I grew up playing almost tons of sports. Our family was really good at introducing us to new sports, and they weren't like my dad was never, okay, we want you to be a pro curler from the time I was 5 years old. So we feel very, very lucky to play a lot of sports, and then curling kind of stuck. My dad was a real good curler, and it was I was pretty skinny and small as a kid, so the hockey route wasn't going to be up my alley. I felt so I didn't fill out till I was probably 18 or 19. I gained my first year of university. I gained about the Frosh 40. Some people call it the Frosh 15. I gained the Frosh 40. So then curling, by that time I'd gone to a World Junior Championship or two, and my dad coached me till I was about 20 years old, and he was a pretty big motivating factor, and he's still a big part of my life when it comes to the curling aspect, and helped me out that way.
And is he still involved? Is he still doing is he coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, he coached Switzerland this past year, and he was part of many Canadian women's teams growing up. He was a very he's probably a world-renowned curling coach. So yeah, he's given back a lot to the sport and kind of have taught me that too. That it's one thing to win and to be part of the current team you're on, but as you get older, it feels just as good to give back. So I'm getting close to that stage of my career where I'll be retiring from heavy competition pretty soon, and willing to and looking forward to kind of giving back to the sport a little bit more as I get older.
That's great. So yeah, maybe walk us through your experience winning gold in Whistler and Seoul.
Well, in about 2006, I was kind of at a crossroads where I'd just gotten into teachers college back in Queens, actually, and I was thinking of going back to get my teacher certificate because at the time it was only a 1-year program. And then I got an offer from Kevin Martin, who was one of the best curlers at the time, out of Edmonton, actually. And we formed a team. I decided to stay in Alberta and form a team that with Kevin to hopefully win an Olympic gold for Canada. And so we worked our butts off at it. Two of the guys were based out of Calgary, so myself and Ben Hebert, and 2 of the members were based out of Edmonton. And we put everything we had into it. And as I said, Calgary was a very inspiring city for me because at Winsport and it was just an area where you could train and be inspired by their athletes. And I didn't think that was available anywhere else in the country. And I didn't really know that until I moved here, how inspiring that would be. So started training really hard and, I never really do anything half-ass. I like to kind of to put everything into it. So that's the way we trained, and we became really quite a force to reckon with on the curling front. And then, in 2010, we won the Olympic trials, and it's hard to win Canada. It's probably the most depth of any nation in curling. So to win Canada and go and play in an Olympics on your home soil in Canada was something that I don't think once a lifetime at best. So that was sure cool, and that experience, whether you were competing in it or I had friends and family that came as fans and met a lot of fans there, and I have to say that's probably one of the highlights of my life was competing in that and meeting fans from all over the country that had come to Vancouver to support the Olympic Games, and it was such a positive, awesome vibe, I don't know if that'll ever happen again in Canada, especially having come close to that bid here in Calgary and not getting that. It's I hope we get to witness that again because it was sure something that was pretty special. So
I had that on my list of questions to ask you here, Johnny, and so maybe let's just jump into that. What are your thoughts on Calgary missing that opportunity for the 2026 Olympics?
I'm always the type of guy that likes to look at the glass half full, and I know there was a lot of, to me, obviously it was unfortunate we didn't get that bid. I've seen firsthand what the Olympics can do. I've seen kind of the energy that it can bring, the positive energy that it can bring. I think if anyone that was in Calgary had actually been in Vancouver, any of the naysayers that had been in Vancouver and saw what transpired in that city during the Olympics, if they actually were able to witness that, I don't think there was a chance they were saying no to the Olympics. And I think that, unfortunately, this Olympic bid, compared to our one in '88, it got very politicized. It got very number crunchingly. Right. It was at the time where Calgary was in a bit of a bust situation, so it wasn't like we were thriving and firing on all 4 cylinders as a city. So with that being said, I think that it became complicated. It became a very complicated bid, and unfortunately, we didn't get that bid. And as I said, I think that one of the things the Olympics are, I don't want to paint the Olympics as this like picture perfect organization that is, super ethical, and because I think we all know that there has been a history of some things that I'm sure the Olympics aren't proud of, and sometimes even athletes aren't proud of being part of that, right? But I think that that's been brought to the forefront, and I think that the Olympics now realize that, that is the power of social media, is that people can't get away with doing things that maybe they did before. And I think that as a result, there's some better people in place now in the Olympic organization. And instead of doing Olympics that's going to end up costing cities millions and even billions of dollars, and they're kind of left in disarray, these Olympics are being built a lot more sustainably, so that rather than leaving a city in a worse situation where they have to, do something with these buildings that, they're actually, it's a lot of thoughts being put into it, starting with like Vancouver. If you look at Vancouver, they did a great job at, they didn't lose, they pretty much broke even, but they were able to create a bunch of infrastructure that was very necessary for the city. And if you go there now, there's a lot of systems in place that were brought there from the Olympics that make so much sense and really help the city become more efficient. And a lot of those costs, rather than being brought to the province and to the city, were taken care of by the IOC and sponsorship. Okay. And that's what I think a lot of people didn't really understand with the Calgary bid, is they're just like, oh, this is going to cost us tons of money. Right. And they didn't understand that, the majority of this money that it's going to cost is going to be paid for by international and Canadian sponsorship and IOC, the Olympic Committee itself. And they are, and just to put things in perspective, I mentioned earlier, I moved to Calgary because I was inspired to be I had young dreams of becoming an Olympian and wearing that maple leaf. And that was created because the Olympics were brought here in '88, and there was a wonderful legacy left in '88. Right. And as a result, many athletes come and had flocked to this city for that, with those dreams. And now we lost that bid for 2026, and we're going to be losing some infrastructure that was created in '88 because it's no longer able to be afforded by the city. So I know that our some bobsled, there's some Bobsled Canada, a lot of the sliding sports, unfortunately, they're on life support now. And that wonderful legacy that was created in '88 is at a pretty decent risk of losing a lot of pretty important parts to it. And it's kind of sad, because that was something that was going to be rebuilt. And again, with the talk of being a sustainable Olympics, that's why they're approaching cities now that have hosted an Olympics before. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to build this Olympics from scratch. Right. It was a perfect candidate city in Calgary because we had the infrastructure for the most part in place that needed maybe a little bit of fine tuning. You look at a place like Canmore too. Sorry if I'm going off on a tangent here, but obviously this is something I'm a little passionate about. But you look at a place like Canmore too, that before '88 was a mining town. I remember a friend of mine, and one of my best friends in town, his name's Tom Coyle. He's a lifelong Calgarian. He still wears his Olympic jacket when he volunteered from '88. And I remember him telling me a story when he was in the '80s. Early '80s. He went to Canmore, and it was an older mining town back then. And there was a house for sale for $20,000. And he said, "What, Canmore? Why would I want to live here? It's an old dirty mining town." And you look at what the Olympics helped create in Canmore, which is a recreation mecca for the whole world right now. Yes. And a lot of that was brought because of the infrastructure that was brought to Canmore from the '88 Olympics. And that infrastructure is in the same situation that we're in Calgary now, is that it needs updating. It's not going to be a massive bill. And again, that massive bill was not going to cost Calgary a lot of money. And, so it's just unfortunate we lost this bid. And I think that because it became complicated, very complicated and politicized, and a lot of trolling on social media, it's really unfortunate, because I really think and truly believe that the good that could have come from these Olympics would have really helped out Calgary, and in a way that it wouldn't have necessarily cost taxpayers very much money at all.
Even outside of the economics, I think you made a good case there that modern Olympics are doing a much better job at making these events much more economical, more viable for these cities. But even outside of that, like you mentioned the legacy, bringing people to Calgary, in '88. I think there are a lot of intangibles that maybe during the campaign weren't really being discussed, that ultimately it's kind of hard to quantify, but there are so many other benefits outside of just dollars and cents that come to a city or a province or a country for hosting the Olympics.
You betcha. And, like if you think of that COP, that's one of our icons of the city. That ski jump, I remember seeing that my first time I ever came here when I drove out to the mountains with our team when I was 18, for a quick tour of the Rockies. And I was like, wow, that is and guess what? If we don't support things like, maybe a potential next Olympic bid, guess what's going to happen to that legacy, those iconic areas of Calgary? They're going to be cleared. There's going to be more housing put in. And you think you're ever going to remember another subdivision going in the west side of Calgary? No. But you're going to remember what we've brought from maybe hosting 2 Olympics. And, I know the people have talked about the traffic going out west right now, out to the mountains is crazy. And it is on the weekend I get off shift at 7 a.m. every morning, and it's like rush hour going to the mountains, especially obviously COVID has ramped her up a bit. But the bid would have created like a bullet train out there, would have helped create this bullet train where it's going to reduce, it's going to have a much better environmental impact because you're just, you're rather than all these cars, going out there in the morning, you got this train going out. It goes to Banff, Lake Louise, maybe even further down the road. It helps with, the hassle of the traffic, but it also creates something a lot more sustainable that both the mountain towns and Calgary would be able to support. So even little things like that, which I'm sure people didn't think about at all when it came to this bid, was something that I think maybe emphasized a bit more if we could have had a bit more of a positive spin on things.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the experience in South Korea. So what was that like for you?
Well, totally different Olympic experience. You go from Vancouver, I felt like, first time in my life, I felt like, and this doesn't happen very often, but I felt like I was a member of the Beatles. Like we won the Olympic gold. We got shipped to do a interview right after a gold medal. Like we're hanging out with Sidney Crosby and Marc-Andre Fleury and for the month of the Olympics. And we get out of our van and it was like, that's the Canadian curling team. And we get like swarmed by, it felt like you were a rock star. So that was, and then you'd go and it was just swarms of Canadian fans in red all over Vancouver and Whistler. And whereas Korea, a lot different. Like the only, you're not going to an Earl's or a Joey's or a sports bar to watch the Olympics. The only thing open to watch the Olympics, if you're a fan there, is like a karaoke bar, And so it was a little bit different. And it wasn't, Canadians, I think that's one thing that was so cool about is you really felt the uniqueness of Canada, because going to a more conservative culture like Korea was a totally different experience. Wonderful nonetheless, because I love the Asian cultures. I love Asian food, and I developed a new love for Korean food. But totally different, wearing the maple leaf in a place that's, a different, totally different time zone. You're halfway across the world. And I felt the love from afar because that's where most of the Canadian fans were cheering. They were getting up at 3 a.m. to watch the games, and it was wonderful to feel that, but a total different experience, and something that I'm glad I was able to experience both, because it gave me some great perspective. And I have to say, I after experiencing both, I even felt luckier to have experienced an Olympic Games in Canada as an athlete, because we do it, and we do it better than anyone in the world, and it was pretty obvious.
So are you still competing?
I am, yeah. I'm playing on a men's team with Kevin Cooey. We're based out of Calgary. I'm sure if there's any curling fans out there listening, they know Kevin Cooey. He's a legend of the sport, and just a wonderful skip. And we actually started playing together when I first moved out to Calgary, and then we kind of had about almost a decade of a hiatus where he had his own team and I played with Kevin Martin. But it's wonderful. We've remained good friends since we met, and we got a great team out of Calgary here. So we'll be gunning for the next Olympics are actually in Beijing, so that's 2022. They're in Beijing, and that's what we're gunning for. Is the Olympic trials are in Saskatoon in the early winter, I think November this year. So yeah, we're right in. There's about 4 or 5 teams from Canada that are kind of vying for that berth for the Maple Leaf, and we'd be one of the front runners. And so if you're tuning in, once the snow starts flying again, you can tune into some curling on TV and hopefully cheer us on. If you're a Calgarian, we'll be representing you loud and proud, and it should be some exciting coverage. So.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you the best of luck with that. So I'm curious, has all of this craziness with COVID and these lockdown measures and whatnot, how has that affected your training?
Well, it's definitely been a unique season. We didn't cancel our season, which is what we were worried from the get-go. It's been like, as everything with COVID, it's like ever moving, and you have to be very adaptable and fluid with your plans, because you can't. There's nothing set in stone, and sometimes you have things change, like on the day of training or the day of an event. So we were able to salvage a season. We helped develop. I know Ben Hebert on our team was really paramount in developing with ATB this mini series, which was. So essentially, we kept it in-house in Alberta, and we developed this mini-series right around Calgary that we hosted a lot of the very competitive curling teams from this province. So that allowed us to kind of hone our skills and keep competing at a high level. And then we had a curling bubble that occurred in Calgary at COP. Okay. So we hosted a major Canadian turned international event with the Grand Slams and World Championships after that. I have to say, we rocked it, and Calgary did a great job of hosting this bubble, because I think a lot of other provinces would have been pretty apprehensive to host this, and we did it. We did it very well, very responsibly, and it was another tip to the cap to Calgary, because we did a great job hosting, and another tip to the cap to that COP and that WinSport, because that's part of that Olympic legacy that we were able to kind of use again, that hosted a major event, and probably the biggest event of curling in the last 2 years was hosted there during COVID, and it went off relatively without a hitch. So it was great to be part of.
Yeah, no, I bet it's such a beautiful facility. As someone also who moved to Calgary recently, and I've played hockey there a few times, just recreationally, and I just blew my mind that this kind of facility is even open to the public. And so I'm guessing it was a pretty interesting experience to be locked up in the WinSport arena for a while there. How long were you in the bubble?
Well, for the better part of 2 months.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was, and we were staying at that Sheraton right next door. So, and the only thing we were allowed to do outside was walk the parking lot. So it was definitely a grind and a big test of mental discipline, because it was not what anything we'd ever experienced before. But I think we made the best of it, and again, grateful that we were able to compete this season, because we have some wonderful sponsors that allow us to do the sport we love to do, and a lot of local Alberta and Calgary sponsors. And it would have been really unfortunate if we couldn't compete and be able to help represent them, and so we're very grateful that we're at least able to throw some stones and make the best out of a unique season.
Definitely. So yeah, I guess transitioning a little bit, you got quite the resume. So being a 2-time Olympian gold medalist is obviously quite the accomplishment. But I read also that you're a gourmet chef. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I don't know if I'm quite a gourmet chef. I went to a school called the National Gourmet Institute. So, but I definitely love to cook. I kind of developed a love for cooking from working at the fire station. I remember when I was a rookie at the station, I thought that cooking, pasta with open the jar of marinara sauce and barbecue and a few sausages was a gourmet dinner. And I quickly got reminded from my seniors that that's not what's expected for dinner. So I learned sort of a love for curling from my fire background, and I've always been very passionate about nutrition and being an athlete and wanting to fuel my body well, and I a few years ago I took a cooking course, a 6-month cooking course that I really loved, and kind of I wanted to hone my skills and be better at it. And So yeah, I took a cooking course actually in New York City of all places. I'd never been there in my life, and that was probably one of my favorite memories of my life, was living there for 6 months and taking that cooking course. And yeah, we've still cooking a lot. I cook pretty a lot on shift at the fire hall now, and just it's a big passion of mine. Is great company with good food, and it's something that I kind of really enjoy. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm quite gourmet, but I love to cook, and certain things I really enjoy cooking. I'm a big outdoorsman, so I like to camp and fish and hunt out here. It's kind of why I fell in love with Calgary, is because it's like your stepping stone to, like growing up in Ottawa, you'd have to go on a moose hunt. You'd have to go for, drive at least 6 or 7 hours, like rural Quebec. Whereas out here, within an hour you can hunt moose, elk, deer. You can fly fish, and for 5 or 6 different type of fishing species. And that's how I'm not a big like trophy hunter, but I just that's something that has kind of I've really started falling in love with it since I moved out here, and that's kind of what our family does. We like to be self-sustainable, and that's how I feed my family. Is I fish and I hunt, and we have some nice locally sourced moose and elk meat, and some great wonderful fresh fish. And that's kind of, I guess, more of I like to cook in that regards, where we use a lot of our own ingredients.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I was going to ask, like, it's obviously you're incorporating that wild game. Have you, since you've taken that course and you've, I guess, really tried to promote a more nutritious kind of diet and lifestyle, have you noticed a big change, like, in your performance, whether it's athletic or just general health? Like have you? Because I'm a bit of a foodie in that sense. I try and eat healthy, but I've always found it challenging to make healthy food that also tastes good. And obviously there's an art to that, and it sounds like you're quite a bit ahead of me on that. So how much have you noticed a change in your energy and your health since doing that?
Well, you nailed it, Simon. Like, the biggest thing when you're trying to cook healthier is if it doesn't taste good, no one's gonna want to eat it. And that's like vital for me. Is if I'm gonna have someone over and be like, hey, and they're a meat and potatoes fan, right? Whereas if I'm gonna cook in something that is maybe a bit healthier than they're used to, it's got to be a 10 out of 10 for taste. So you nailed it there, and that's something that I've always prided myself on. And it really does have an impact, from an athletic point of view, for sure. But I think I can relate it nowadays to a mental health standpoint. Like, I know when I'm eating shitty, I'm eating burgers and fries, or like the quick fixes, and even though you get that instant gratification, fast forward an hour, guess what? You're not feeling good. You're lazier. Like, you're sitting on the couch more than you want to be. You're not motivated. So I know, and from what I've studied and kind of what I've experienced, that's the biggest thing for me. Is like, it's so easy to get nowadays, especially when we've been locked up for the last year or two, to get depressed. Mental health is legit, and being able to eat and having the discipline to kind of eat well and maybe put some passion and love into some cooking has really been helpful for me. And secondarily, since I took this course, I think it was back in 2016, what I didn't realize in Calgary, and what's really starting to flourish in this city, is we have a wonderful food scene. We have some amazing restaurants, and sourcing ingredients. Yes, there's some great grocery stores, and I used to always be like, okay, one grocery store guy that was the closest one to me. But guess what? There are amazing farmers markets all over the city that are supported by local farmers, all within about 100 miles of Calgary.
Yes.
And that's what I love going to, because you're supporting hardworking local folks that are putting their heart and soul into bringing this food. Maybe it's 50 cents or another $1 for the food, but guess what? It's not traveling in a truck 2 weeks from Mexico to get here.
Right.
It's coming. It was picked that morning, and the taste on it is phenomenal. And you're able to create such a more delicious dish when you're able to do that. So I challenge folks out there that haven't been to these great farmers markets we have, because there's many all around the city, including a new one that's going to be coming up in the northwest, right next to COP, and that I forget the name of that area, but there's going to be a new one there within a year. There's many near downtown. There's pretty much popping all over the city, and they're wonderful outings. You bring the family, because there's many things like for the family to do, and they're just something that I've really enjoyed doing with my family and friends in the last few years, and it's opened my eyes to the food scene as well in Calgary that is a hidden gem, and you kind of gotta kind of let yourself kind of get off the bandwagon of, okay, I'm going to go to the same restaurants all the time, because if you have an open mind and are able to try some new restaurants out, especially some good local restaurants that are open by Calgarians for Calgarians, it feels good to support that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I work in the ag field, and I work directly with growers, with farmers in Alberta, and one silver lining of this whole COVID pandemic is that I think people are thinking more locally in terms of their food source. And talking about restaurants, obviously that sector was kind of negatively affected by all of this with some of these shutdowns. So couldn't agree more in the sense of getting out and supporting these local businesses, local restaurants, and ultimately local farmers who are growing this produce. Rather than supporting, Mexican produce or whatever it is, they are buying from Alberta farmers, so that's great. So yeah, I guess I wanted to ask a bit about your current career. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you do as a firefighter and kind of your day-to-day with that?
Yeah, I work for a wonderful organization just outside the city. So we pretty much cover the surrounding area of Calgary. It's called Rocky View County. I love working for them. One of the big reasons I work for them is they have 24-hour shifts, and they're supportive of my curling career. So being able to do that, I know that Calgary actually has. I have a lot of friends that I work with from Calgary Fire Department as well, and they've actually recently gone to 24-hour shifts during this COVID situation, and I know that there's been a little bit of a battle with the city, because a lot of the firefighters want 24-hour shifts. It's proven via some wonderful studies how healthier it is for the firefighters, how they have more time at home. It's environmentally more friendly because you cut your travel time in half. And just from a total quality of life standpoint, these 24-hour shifts have proven to be very positive. And the CFD has been experiencing that for almost a year, all the members. And they're getting some bit of a pushback from the city now. So it would be great. It'd be really, I know that a lot of them would really like to see that in the future. And that's one of the reasons I never applied to Calgary, was because they had 10 and 14-hour shifts, so split shifts. Okay. And you had to pretty much be at work twice as much during a month. So it wasn't, if for an athlete, it was a little bit more challenging. So I work for Rocky View. I absolutely love my job. I have some great friends, lifelong friends that I've created there. My daily, our daily routine is, we cover a major portion of Highway 1. Just west of the city. We cover the airport at Springbank. We actually just had a plane crash my last shift. It's one of the busiest, if not the busiest, municipal airport in all of Canada, which I don't think a lot of people know about. And we cover a lot of like rural-urban interface. So we get a lot of grass fires, but we also get some urban, the urban sprawls moving out there, like with Harmony. That's right next to us. There's going to be a new mall, I think, being put in there. Forget the name of it going in, but I think it's right across from Callaway Park there. Okay. So it's just a wonderful. I really enjoy, because it's given me a lot of experience, different types of unique experience. One day I'll be driving the truck, another day I'll be the hydrant man or the nozzle man. Another day I'm bush buggy and tender crew, which means I'm going to all the medicals and the first on scene at medicals. So. It's very gives you a lot of variety, and I get to cook a lot. I get to cook 3 meals a day with those 24-hour shifts, and it's just a wonderful job. So it's been very supportive of my curling career, and I have to say it's one of the reasons. Another reason I kind of chose to move to Calgary, because growing up in Ontario, I heard the odds of becoming a firefighter were like 0.2%, and it was very, very hard to get. And I think a lot of people that become CFD, Calgary firefighters, is they're half of them aren't from here. They've moved here because there is that opportunity, and I think that's wonderful that there is that demand for great firefighters. So,
Before we move on to the final question, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I know another thing I love about Calgary, because I've said a lot of, I know this is a very positive Calgary podcast, which I'm in. I love to talk about Calgary, but I've really developed a love for fishing. I grew up kind of fishing, and then kind of, when you go to university and you're living in a concrete jungle, that all of a sudden is a lower priority, unfortunately for many people. But living back out here, and it's amazing that you can fish pretty much in the middle of the city of Calgary, and the water is glacier fed, very clean water for the most part, and you can catch wonderful fish. And it's something that I think, is a bit of a hidden gem for Calgary. And it's something that, I've kind of fallen back in love with. And it's given me a lot of really good memories over the last few years. And I think that if you've never experienced that in Calgary, it's worth, you can get really easy fly fishing tours where it's a great Christmas or birthday gift, because you can, for a few $100, you can get a lesson for you and your friends, or a birthday present where you give someone this. They get a fly rod fully equipped, half a day on the Bow River, and you're out there fishing, and it's something that is a pretty darn cool experience. So that's another thing I love about Calgary.
So for the listeners, and where would someone go to get set up with a tour like that?
Well, I wish I could promote someone individually, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm just I know that there's several in the city, so I would just Google fly fishing tours, fly fishing lessons Calgary, and I'm sure there's a few that'll pop up with some great reviews. And it's a wonderful experience that if you've never tried it in Calgary, especially during these times where we're just looking for new ideas to get outside, this is a pretty darn good one.
Yeah. Johnny, we really appreciate you coming out, and we're gonna end the podcast with a question for you. Why do you believe in Calgary?
Well, I believe in Calgary because when I first moved here, I saw the greatness in the city because of their people. I saw that right when I landed here, and people volunteering to welcome me to the city with that warm country cowboy handshake. And it's something that I feel maybe we've gotten away from a little bit in the last 10 or 20 years here, but I know that it's still deep down there. And that's why I still believe in Calgary, because I've met many people that still have that greatness in them and that energy in them. And I challenge the Calgarians that, sometimes maybe focus a bit more too much on the negative things of this city and what we're doing wrong. And I challenge them to be leaders in our city and to remember why they moved to Calgary and help become one of the reasons why other people want to make this their home.
Great. Johnny Morris, thanks again for joining us today.
No problem. My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.